Time now for a look at the day's top business news. Brian Quinn joins us for that. Brian, we're going to start in the United States, where damage from Hurricane Helene is shining a bit of a light on the economic damage brought on by the effects of climate change.
It is indeed, Eve. In addition, of course, to claiming more than 90 lives, Helene has brought another disaster, an economic disaster, to the shores of Florida and beyond. Early estimates range from $15 to $26 billion in property damage and $5 to $8 billion in lost economic activity, making a total cost of up to $34 billion. Roughly $6 billion of that is going to be paid out by private insurance. That is a big problem for insurers, especially in Florida, which has been hit with what seems like a never-ending series of hurricanes. Many insurance companies have actually left Florida due to too much risk. Among those are Farmers, Bankers, Southern Fidelity, Progressive, and AAA. New companies have moved in to take their place, but they generally have less experience and, more importantly, they have less capital to actually pay out claims. Analysts warn that a new wave of storm claims could send many of the smaller new insurers into bankruptcy. Here's Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
Well, I'm concerned at some of the people who may have had their insurance canceled in the last year. I mean, we had just talked to some folks. They basically, their insurer ran for cover after the Idalia. So there may be people that weren't able even to get insurance. So I think that's going to be a very messy situation. Yes, I am concerned about it.
So insurance companies in trouble, but clearly also the customers.
Indeed, many Florida residents down there are still waiting for their claims to be settled from 2022's Hurricane Ian. Homeowners have seen their insurance premiums in Florida rise by 45% over the past 5 years. The average annual cost of a policy in the state is $5,500. That is nearly 2.5 times the U.S.'s national average. One study estimates that across the country, residents most exposed to climate disasters like hurricanes and wildfires will be paying an average of $700 more each year in insurance premiums by 2053. The U.S. home insurance market was worth around $233 billion last year. It relies, of course, on spreading risk around, but the risk level overall is rising. One report from 2022 showed fully 10% of U.S. homes were impacted by natural disasters the previous year. Winter storms caused $15 billion in damage in 2021, while hurricanes did $33 billion worth. Wildfires also a growing risk, in the West now. Major firms like Allstate and State Farm have pulled out of California in recent years. Rising premiums and fewer choices are leading many Americans to forego home insurance entirely, which can, of course, have disastrous results when a storm like Helene hits. Take a listen here.
So we were all kind of talking about insurance, and people's like, no, I don't have insurance. Why? I dropped it. They wouldn't help me. I paid all that money, and they would not help me. Some people talking about they paid years and no help.
Gosh, really left with nothing there. Moving on, Brian, though, let's check in on how the markets are looking.
So even it's a mixed picture on the Asian indexes Monday, especially when it comes to China versus Japan. Investors in Japanese equities are looking at incoming Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba's history of criticizing the Bank of Japan for its ultra-loose monetary policy in recent years. Ishiba is expected to support the BOJ's current efforts to raise its interest rates. That is helping to strengthen the yen, but it's sending the Nikkei in Tokyo down some 4.8%, a big drop there. Chinese indexes, meanwhile, gaining significant ground as the latest data out of the country shows the manufacturing sector shrank by less than expected in September. The Chinese real estate sector up at nearly 7.5% on Monday amid some new measures from Beijing to support the country's crisis-hit property market, including rate cuts for existing mortgages. We saw Shanghai up more than 7% so far.
Finally, for business, Britain to become the first country in the G7 to fully end its use of coal-powered electricity.
So Ratcliffe on Soar, a coal power station, that's Britain's last surviving coal station. It's having burned millions of tons of coal to generate electricity. On Monday, the plant will be powering down for good after 54 years as the country steams ahead with its green energy transition. There are even potential plans to convert the site into a green hydrogen facility by the end of the decade. Vedika Bahel has the story.
By the end of this month, there will be no more smoke coming out of the 8 giant cooling towers of the Ratcliffe on Soar power station. The UK's last remaining coal-fired power plant, its closure after 5 decades of use, will mark a huge shift for locals.
Well, it's such a shame, really, when it's been here for such a long time. You know, it's like part of the family, isn't it?
It's one of the places where it's like you can recognise it from when you're coming home, and you're like, oh, I'm not too far from home, because I live like 10 minutes away from it, and it's like a landmark, really.
It also marks a huge shift for the country, signalling the end to coal-powered electricity in the UK and moving forward with green energy. Coal was a crucial part in powering the British Industrial Revolution in the 18th and 19th century, pushing the country to global superpower status. In the 1980s, coal still represented 70% of the country's electricity mix, but has gradually declined to just 1% last year. In 2023, natural gas made up 1/3 of the UK's electricity production, with nuclear and wind power being the other main sources.
And that's really as a product of all of the regulation and the policy of the last decade. And it hasn't happened overnight. This has been a long journey. But it's really positive. It really shows that it can be done. And it shows that other countries can follow suit and have an economy that works without coal on it.
Dismantling the East Midlands site is to take 5 years. The UK is the first of the G7 nations to scrap coal power, a step forward in its goal to decarbonise electricity by 2030.
You'd have to say generally positive development for Britain's energy climate transition. Interesting that you can get nostalgic and sentimental about a coal-fired power plant next to your home, but I guess some people do.
Indeed. I'm sure those big cauldrons will stay, though. They'll still have that landmark.
Probably for a while.
For a while, anyway. Brian Quinn with the Business Update. Thanks a lot for that.